No, you don't have the whole human race. You have a religion trying to say this is what they become. Do all those people in that religion go that way? No. You have whores in religion. You have priests in you have a priests in a. I bet you could go to the Hell's Angels and find somebody in the Hell's Angels that is better than somebody in a congregation. And I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying you could find, and they might not put an outwardly presence, and there might be all the Hell's Angels say, well, we really like this guy, and is this, that, and the other, and he's just, cheerful or whatever. And he always finds a better way of doing things, maybe better than dealing drugs. Maybe that's why some of them are legit now. But what I'm saying is, all these different groups, there's not 7 billion different groups. You got 7 billion different people, and you're trying to funnel them through a place that they weren't made to be funneled through. And although you try to traditionalize, that you can't. Tradition is not the way. The human race has to come together as one. You can't come together as a religion. You can't come together as a government. You can't come together as a military. You can't come together as a science. You can't come together as a criminal entity. You can't come together as a, whatever. The human race has to come together, and they all have to agree. And that thought, even though the thought that was on them, they might say, wow, we have, you're right. And there's going to be people saying, man, I'm not going to agree with nobody. I'm on what I want to do, and I want to do it right because my path is evil, and I'm going to stick with this, or my path is to disagree with everything because nobody's ever going to come up with the right plan. Just like Jews, they're never going to have what's their God is, whatever it is. A Messiah. Well, the Messiah hasn't been here yet. He hasn't been here, and we're waiting on him. They're waiting on, even if the most perfect thing came down the chute, there would still be people automatically going to condemn it and automatically made to say, no, this is not it. No, this is not a perfect person. Not saying that there's ever going to be a Messiah. Not saying that there isn't ever a person like, there's people saying, well, was there ever Jesus? Well, there was a Buddha. Buddha was apparently a real person that was educated and went around to the people that were uneducated, and he tried to teach them a better way to eat, better way to live, how to wash, to cleanse their hands and stuff. He was just basically an education of the illiterate. Instead of the literate having to get an education, which back in those times, people were picked for a higher education. People were picked to be schooled. It's just everybody shoved into the classroom. Education system should be people that are, I need to learn. Okay, you can learn. If you don't want to learn, you're not going to learn. If you need to learn, say people, somebody's 20 years old and they realize, wow, I was messed around in school. I was just wanted to hang, and now I need to read because I don't want to be in a gang. I don't want to be an idiot. I want to work, but I can't read. Why aren't they, they got to go pay for school. They don't have enough education to get a good job to pay for an education. And well, everybody says, well, you should have learned that in school. And there's people that ain't born to learn it while they're in school. Why? So why isn't the education system, you pay for it once. If you can't learn, when you want to learn, you should be able to go back there. And it shouldn't be frowned upon. If there's a 20-year-old sitting in the classroom learning to read, he shouldn't be frowned upon. Of course, 20-year-old around fourth graders, it kind of looks weird. But it's also... I don't know how you do that. If you put 20s and 30s and people want to read later in life, or people want to learn science. I mean, once you pay for an education, you don't take it, you miss it, but you can't. What if you can't learn it at that time? What if you're saying, well, you got all this, you came from an undisciplined family, and your concentration, you don't get it until you're up against a wall about, wow, I need a job, I can't do anything, I got crappy wages, I can't get anything. I can't do my education again because you have to pay for education. I can't get that. Well, I'm going to have to take a criminal path. So why is an education, you pay for it once and you can do it the rest of your life. Maybe you say, I can't learn geometry right now. You can take geometry later down in life. I can't learn. That way you wouldn't have all these people disrupting classrooms. You'd have people in there want to learn when they want to learn. And I know it's be hard to put children. Kids wouldn't. Parents wouldn't want their children. Of course, that's crazy to even have children. Putting them together, their minds are being formed, and you put them in society. You just basically thrusting them in to the thought of everybody else swarming around, and that you're just like it's like throwing a purity into an acid hole or a mud hole. That kid's going to come out different. You're thinking, well, that's what forms. That's what we've all done. It didn't always be like that. It was always family raised. It used to be family raised. The only people that were picked that they knew that they was on the right path to learning were accepted into a higher education. They didn't just teach everybody. That's why all these. That's why you hear all these religious stories of these people. Well, there's Jesus went around the children. Well, maybe he taught them some stuff. I'm not saying there was a Jesus that was walking on water. I'm saying if there was a Jesus, he could have slack-lined rope that was laying on water in between boats, or walked on the net strung in between boats, the net line, and people on the shore would say, "Oh, look, he's walking on water." Well, what he's doing, he's slack-lining along the freaking fishing line, is what he's probably doing. Oh, look, he was he made a guy see. What if this guy, had been in had he had a crust across his eyes or something. That's what it says. And this guy, maybe he was just dirty and he just came out of a lime, and this guy's always been like that, and he just let the crust of lime cover it, because back then the limestone was mined or something like that. And not saying that limestone didn't just cover his eyes, and everybody thought, oh, he's blind, doesn't have any eyes. He walked up there and cracked all that stuff off. I'm not saying any of this miracles was like actual boom, lightning came down and struck it. But I'm not saying he lived. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not saying it's a bunch of stories thrown together just to make a story. Not saying it just ain't a story. Not saying he lived. Not saying he didn't. Not saying he performed miracles. It definitely ain't saying there's somebody that walked on water. I'm not definitely saying that there's not somebody that did all these miracles that wasn't something else. But just like Moses splitting the waters, well, like they've been proven that an area could have had a large, like how the waves are sucked out during what's that big tidal waves? Tsunami. And Moses was a general or whatever, a giant, real high up on the military chain, and he would have known a lot of stuff about military and tides and all this stuff. And he could have been there, and maybe there was just a high tide or low tide. Or he knew when the low tide was, so he took these people out there. And knowing that this general, by this had all these cavalry that was going to chase this Moses down. Not saying Moses lived, not saying he didn't. It could have been something that since Jews made Christianity. Jewish was a founder of Muslims. There was a Jewish guy founder. All these religions, not all of them, but a lot of the big ones were founded by an offshoot or somebody Jewish that went off on their own and founded another religion. So Moses could have been known about this tidal wave, or he could have got lucky and there was a tsunami, or it could have been a heavy tide that he knew happened every year because back in when he was a pharaoh, the scribes noted, and he read about something in there like there's a large tide in this area, and the general of the cavalry that was by there might have not known about this large tidal wave. So he could have said, I know we can get those people across when the tide goes out, and knows what times it comes back. And anyway, I'm not saying that happened, not saying it didn't, but it could have been just knowledge of tidal waves back then. A lot of the religion is. I'm not saying it's real, but I'm not saying that there's not truth to it in that form, in the form that they change it to make it sound story or out of this world. Like, wow, this could only happen because of there's a space ghost sitting out there in his invisible jet. And he's so much smarter than everybody, he can just point his finger and make everything. Anyway, none of that. So anyway, I was talking about Dahmer and changing thought, and now I've forgotten again what I was talking about. 32 minutes. Oh man, talking too much today.